I've been using a custom journaling workflow in Obsidian for over 5 years now. But before that, I was very happy using the excellent Day One app on my iPhone and my Mac. And while I love the fact that I can customize my own workflow exactly the way I want it in Obsidian, I've honestly missed the On This Day feature in Day One, and I've thought often about switching back to Day One altogether, because looking back at old journal entries that were surfaced from previous years can be both interesting and insightful. And yes, you can certainly cobble together something like this in Obsidian using community plugins, but figuring out how to do this exactly the way I want it has proven a little bit tricky. I came pretty close in the past using data view, but I could never get it quite where I wanted it. So when I decided to try and build it myself again using the new Bases core plugin available in version 1.9, I honestly didn't have high hopes that I'd be able to get this just right. But TLDR, I got it. And in this video, I'm gonna show you exactly how I set this up. Now just FYI, the resulting code snippet is pretty complex. And I've learned from previous videos that it can be tricky to try and follow along. So rather than try to talk through the whole thing, I'm gonna give you the exact code I ended up using for this that you can then just paste into your own daily note template file. But because of the formatting, it's not gonna work to put it in the description, so I've added it to the daily note template file in my Obsidian starter vault. If you want to implement this, then download the starter vault for free, go to the included daily note template file, and then just copy the code snippet from there. I'll share a little bit more about that at the end of this video. Okay, so let's get started by discussing briefly what exactly the Bases plugin actually does. Bases is really short for databases, and it's a new core plugin in version 1.9 that, as I record this, is currently in beta and is available via the insider releases to Obsidian Catalyst supporters. It's a new core plugin, which means that it ships with the app and it can be toggled on or off via the core plugins in the settings. And it basically brings Notion type database capabilities to a collection of notes inside your Obsidian vault. Now, personally, I think Bases is a really big deal. I'm actually working on another video that's going to dive deeper into how Bases works in general, but for now, just understand that it can be really useful for any kind of collection. One example of this is my personal collection of book notes. I always read a physical book and I take notes on my iPhone using MindNote. Then I export those notes as a PDF that I actually give away every week in my weekly newsletter. And I also drag that PDF as well as the markdown outline into Obsidian so that I can link those ideas together. Now with Bases, I can just point that plugin, add a folder full of book notes, and I can use any metadata properties from those notes to sort or filter those notes inside of the Bases view. So here's what this looks like. This is an example of a Bases card view of all the book notes I have in my vault with the cover image, the author, the rating, the year published, and the page count all visible on the cards. And just FYI, I'm gonna be adding all 217 of these to Life HQ, my epic done for you Obsidian vault shortly. Now in this video, we're gonna look at a more basic example. I wanna show you how to make a list of notes from the daily notes folder that has the say, day, month combination as the current daily note. So this is a small collection that will only have a few linked files, but it will help to understand a little bit about how Bases actually works before you see this in action. So with Bases, you can set up different views for looking at your notes based on the filters that you use. Now currently there are only 2 types of views available, but more are coming soon according to the Bases public roadmap. First is Table, which shows each note as a row in a table, and second is Cards, which shows each note as a card in a grid, like my book notes database. These views display notes that meet the criteria that you set up in the filters and can be sorted by other metadata properties contained in the notes themselves. Now you can add a base in Obsidian one of 3 ways. First, you can open the command palette and you can select the Create New Base command, which opens a new blank .base file. Second, you can open the command palette and select the Insert New Base command, which creates a new blank .base file and embeds it in the open note at the current cursor location. And then third, you can insert a Bases code block and use the appropriate syntax to create the filter and view options that you want to use. Now for this example, I'll be using option 3. So to insert a Bases code block, you just need to create a code block using 3 backticks anywhere in your note, and then add the word base, which tells Obsidian what plugin to use, and then close the code block with 3 more backticks. This doesn't add any additional information that is actually useful when creating a base, but it does add a blank base to the active note without creating a whole separate .base file. And if you view your note in live preview, you can now interact with this new base and start configuring things. The crazy thing about this to me is just how fast things render using the Bases core plugin. I have over 50,000 notes in my main Obsidian vault, but adding a base like this that shows all those files is basically instant. It's pretty impressive in my opinion how responsive everything is with bases. But there's one other thing that I find incredibly impressive about adding a base to a note like this. You don't actually have to write the syntax by hand. Once you add a base, you can play with the filter and the view options in the base's UI, and the code then gets updated behind the scenes. So when you're done, you can then switch to source mode, copy the syntax, and paste it where you want it in your note. Now, before I go any further, I have to give a big shout out to Ed Nico for an excellent video that he put together on creating a bases formula that allows you to see notes that match the current day. Now, I've modified what he did here for my daily notes template file, but his video is really what unlocked things for me. So real briefly, what Ed showed in his video is that using bases, you can create a property that uses a formula to display a value of either true or false. And you can then set a filter that shows only values of true, which gives you a list of notes that match specific criteria listed in the file name. In his example, it showed a live view of all notes that match the current day. I recognize that since all of my daily notes use the year-month-day format, for example, 2025-07-21, I should be able to isolate only notes that share the same month and day formatting, the 07-21 part, and put those in a list. So here's the formula from Ed's video. And basically what this does is show a value of true if the month and date in the file name match the current day and month determined by the day and month in the system settings on your computer, which is great. But the one problem with this is it's always a live view. So if I view this base on August 31st, it's going to show all of the other daily notes with 08-31 in the file name. This means I can't have a historical view of what else happened on this day, since it's always being updated to reflect the date and time of the system when you're looking at that note. It's not quite what I'm looking for, but it is close. And with a few tweaks at this point, I knew that I would be able to get there. The first change I made was to replace the datenow.month and datenow.day with date and month tokens that would match the daily note file where the snippet was run when the file was created. I already used this on my current daily note template file for the chronological Bible reading plan and the block which shows what tasks are due today. Now, using double curly brackets and the date : token, you can grab the date associated with that particular daily note in a variety of formats. For this workflow, we need two specific formats, and here's what they look like. So inside of double curly brackets, you can do date : which creates the month in a 2-digit format, for example, 07. You can also do double curly brackets date : DD, which creates the day in a 2-digit format, for example, 21. Using these tokens, I was able to rewrite the code to show files that match the month and day associated with the daily note. And at this point, the code block looked something like this. Now, a quick sidebar about how these work. The equal sign in the formula is actually used to show values that match. So using this in my formula, I was able to show all the notes that had the same month and the same day formatting as in the name of the file. But it also showed the current daily note unnecessarily. So I added another part to this, which removed notes that had the same year in the file name as the current year. So here's the code for that. And in this case, the exclamation point =, indicates a value that does not match. So now we can combine those two, and here is the final formula that I ended up with for this property. So basically this formula returns a value of true if the month matches, the day matches, and the year does not match. The result of this base is a list of notes for on this day that matches the formatting of the daily note where the base lives that does not include the current daily note. So here's what this actually looks like inside of a daily note once you create it with this code snippet in the daily notes template file. So as you can see, using the table view, it returns a list of the other daily notes that match the filter. So that's the basic functionality. But remember, we can actually use the Bases UI to customize this code block exactly the way we want it. So here's a quick rundown of all of the changes that I have made, and I'll share the final code block at the end. So first, the main filter that's used in all of the views is only showing files that exist inside of the daily notes folder. The additional filter used for this particular view is showing only notes where the on_this_day function that I just described returns a value of true. Now next, under the Properties tab, I've only checked the file name property, but you can see I've renamed it Daily Note. And I'm also sorting those daily notes in reverse chronological order so that the newest notes are at the top. Now, unfortunately, this all breaks down once we grab the code and we replace the dates with the date tokens. You can no longer see the live preview. But I did find it helpful to craft this live in a daily note before moving that code snippet to my daily note template file and finishing it off there. Now, the end result is a full code snippet that looks like this. I'll highlight the text in the snippet as I go, but basically, here's what each part of this does. This is what tells Bases to only look at notes in the Daily Notes folder. This is what creates the function that I described using the formula up above and names it on_this_day. This is what renames the display name for the files to Daily Note. This is what creates a table view named on this day. This is what applies the formula as a filter. And this is what sorts the results in descending order with the newest notes at the top. So now I can create a new daily note and the date tokens get replaced by the dates associated with that daily note, creating a historical on this day section at the bottom of that daily note. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, you don't need to try and code this all by hand. There's a lot of indenting here, which makes it pretty hard to copy and paste. So I've actually added this to the daily notes template file in my Obsidian starter vault. So you can just download the Obsidian starter vault and then copy and paste the code snippet from that daily notes template file and put it into your own daily notes template file if you want to use this. The starter vault also includes a bunch of other Obsidian resources to help you organize, create, and optimize your notes like a pro. You can download the starter vault for free by going to vault.practicalpkm.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in another video.